Every photographer worth their salt is gonna tell you that the most important thing for taking good photos is to develop an eye for finding good compositions. Oh, and to check if your SD card is in the camera before you leave the house. But developing an eye for compositions is such an abstract concept. That's like telling a person that can't fly a plane, oh, just develop a feeling for flying. That's not helpful. And it took me years to develop that intuition for finding compositions. So today I've decided to condense everything I know about compositions into a single video, so you can develop your photographic eye a lot quicker than I did. Probably all of you know the rule of thirds. It's usually the first thing that is taught about compositions. The way I was taught the rule of thirds is instead of placing your subject at the center, place it on one of the lines of the grid. And in a vertical composition, it makes sense to place your subject on the upper or lower line, or on one of the intersections. But what I've realized is that I apply the rule of thirds in a lot more ways. One of the most important things people talk about is having balance in your images. If you have one unit of stuff on the one side, there needs to be something on the other side to balance that out. In this very simple example, you've got a guy taking his bad Instagram picture on the bottom right, which aligns with the grid, and the sun on the top left. It might have been better to place these two objects at the corners of the grid, but my lens actually wasn't wide enough to frame it like that. Though in my opinion, that's not a big problem. What I want you to focus on when balancing objects is to roughly align the objects with the grid of thirds and keep the distance to the edges of the frame similar. So if you were to draw a line through the center here, you can see the subject's position is basically mirrored by the sun. Here's some more examples. In this shot, the moon on the right is balanced out by the mountain range on the left. Here, the car on the left is balanced out by the sign on the right. All you have to do is look for things to place roughly on the opposite side of the grid of thirds. And keep in mind, the objects you are balancing don't always have to have the same size. In this image, this tiny car on the left balanced out this mountain range on the right. They aren't anywhere close to the same size, but the fact that this car is so tiny puts the size of everything else into context. And I was told it's really not about the size of the subject, but how you use it. In some cases, it can be a very subtle difference. Here I just clone stamped this tiny boat in the back from one side to the other side of the frame. You definitely don't have to get it right in camera 100% of the time, because you can't control every part of the world around you. So sometimes small changes are needed, or even cropping the frame afterwards. I heavily cropped this image when editing, because you don't always see the best composition in the moment, especially when you need to act fast to get the shot. But to get the best results, timing is always the deciding factor. Finding your composition and then waiting for somebody to walk into frame, or waiting for the lighting to change, or waiting for your client to finally pay that invoice, or waiting for a seagull to fly into the frame. I don't know why, but I seem to have this strange gift that birds just perfectly fly into my frame. If the Avengers needed me the next time Earth is being invaded by aliens, I would be seagull flying into frame man. Because, I don't know, that seems to be my only superhuman skill. Another very important thing to incorporate into your compositions is depth. You can always create depth by having something in the foreground, your subject in the midground, and then the background behind that. One of the easiest ways to create depth is to just shoot through things, having plants or trees in the foreground, or finding an interesting angle through an alleyway. When you place an object in the foreground, it's also a good idea to align the foreground element with the grid of thirds. Creating depth in your images always gives more visual interest and gives it more of a 3D feeling. If you want to give your audience a true 4D feeling of your images, then just set them in front of your computer, show them the photos you took in Iceland, and blast them with the wind machine. One of the biggest mistakes I have found in many of my old images is not having a clearly identifiable subject in the image, which is super important to get simple and pleasing compositions. One thing I often see beginners do, and I also do all the time if I'm honest, is just point the camera at something that looks cool, like a nice alleyway or something, but if there is no obvious subject, it can very quickly either feel cluttered or like it's missing something. And that in turn means the viewer doesn't have a clear focal point that draws in their attention. Also, identifying your subject can help you with finding a composition, because when you already know what the subject is going to be, for example this little tree, you can then look for a balanced composition that makes the tree stand out. When you take the concept of balance to the extreme, you get symmetry. The easiest way to create symmetry in street photography at least is either to be completely orthogonal to whatever is in front of your camera or at a 45-degree angle. And what you always want to look for when creating symmetry is aligning different things in your image if possible. For example, this image of a tree I took, I first tried a standard rule of thirds composition, but I wasn't too happy with that, so I tried a vertical composition, aligning the edge of this pointy rock behind with the center of the tree. And this still applies the rule of thirds, because the tree is aligned with the lower line and that big old boulder in the top is aligned with the top line. This generally is one of my favorite go-to compositions, I would say. Just aligning things vertically and having symmetry on the vertical axis. One popular concept is leading lines, basically having lines in the frame that lead the viewer's eye towards the subject. This is very simple when you have a road, for example, and that road points towards the subject. But it can also be the way the light falls onto a building pointing towards the subject, or it can be a shape that frames the subject. It's also a good idea to combine all of these concepts. In this photo we have leading lines leading us towards the subjects, the image is very symmetrical on the vertical axis, the main focal point is framed by the rule of thirds, and the subjects below plus the window above are performing a better balancing act than Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, trying to avert your expectations while not destroying the entire franchise. God, I'm still angry about that. Remember what I said about the rule of thirds? It says to not center things, but rather place them on the lines. But I absolutely love centering things, and I find in many cases you can still use the rule of thirds for that. For example, here I have this palm tree in the middle, which is perfectly framed by the flowers all around, which align with the grid of thirds as well. You can also do the opposite and leave the center empty while filling the frame around it. If you're not sure how to frame a scene, one of the easiest ways to find a composition is to walk left and right, or even just move your head from side to side, and try to find things that could align to create symmetry, or to find things that could balance each other, which you can then place on the grid. By the way, if you like how these images are looking, they are all edited with my Analog Vibes Lightroom preset pack. You can get it for just $5 at the link in the description and help me keep this channel running. I think many photographers that have been doing photography for a while don't take the rule of thirds that seriously and look for other ways to explain compositions. But 90% of what those people are talking about can also be explained with the rule of thirds. The other 10% can be explained by a few too many beers while editing photos. So definitely enable the grid lines on your camera or on your phone's camera, because with that grid you can pretty much do everything I've just talked about. Though you have to keep in mind, implementing these concepts doesn't automatically lead to amazing images. And on the flip side, ignoring these concepts doesn't mean the image is automatically bad. For example, this image I took of two seagulls. There is no balance in the image at all, and I just placed them smack dab in the center of the frame. But I still really like it and the way the wings of the seagulls seem to complement each other. Sometimes it's difficult to vocalize exactly what makes a composition good, but I hope these concepts I've shown you today are things you can utilize the next time you go out. And I don't even mean the next time you go out to take photos, but just the next time you walk to the grocery store or to university, or you're looking out the window of the bus or whatever. You don't need your camera, just try to look around and identify possible compositions where things align and are symmetrical, or where there are objects that could balance each other. That's one of the best tips I can give. Even if you're not out with your camera, you can train your photographic eye by just looking around and trying to visualize compositions. If you're interested in more photography videos, why don't you check out one of these? And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye!